see my heart, examine my heart, wring it out. Please use me and talk through me. Please use this to help somebody. In Jesus' name, amen. Not everyone wants to be sober. It's a hard truth in recovery that nobody wants to talk about, and I say that it doesn't get talked about enough because I remember when I was in treatment, I was the only one talking about it. And we'll get to that. We'll get to where that led me. Before that sentence triggers you, I want you to please hear me all the way through this. This topic is personal for me. It hits home in a way that still hurts because my mom is still out there. So if anyone is watching this, please, I ask that you pray for my mother. I believe in the power of prayer. She has a pattern of, she goes to jail, she gets clean by force, gets out, stays clean for a little bit, and then she goes right back to the same people, the same environment, the same guilt and shame, and nothing changes. Nothing changes except for the amount of time that she's locked up. And I've had to come to terms with something that is incredibly painful. Being forced to get sober is not the same thing as choosing sobriety. I know this because that was me most of my life. Every time I got sober earlier on, it was because I got arrested, put on probation. I was backed into a corner. Sobriety, I didn't choose sobriety. It chose me, and I hated it. I hated it. And beyond hating it, I was terrified of it. I feared it. There was so much unknown surrounding a life without substances. I started using mood and mind altering substances when I was 12 years old. I'm 36 now. That means that I spent the majority of my life using. By the time I became an adult, I had no idea who I was without substances because substances were all I knew. I could not imagine a life without substances, without something to quiet the noise in my head, and that's not how it started for me. It started because it was fun. When I would hear people say, just get sober, what they didn't understand was that was like, it sounded like a death sentence to me, which is the thought of being sober. Could not even comprehend a life without a substance. One of the things that I fear most is the unknown. And, sobriety was completely unknown to me. Sobriety meant change and loss and grief. And I'm going to go over that because it's more than just what you would think on the surface level of lost, right? Like lost, like, oh, you're losing your identity. I lost my identity because that was my identity. I started smoking when I was 12, and I didn't spend a sober day after that I can remember. I mean, really, like, by the time I was in ninth grade, I was already involved in the distribution of it. And at that point, I had literally built my whole identity around it. Sobriety meant change meant loss, and loss meant grief. It meant that I would have to change my friends, change my environment, change how I cope with pain and emotions that I never let myself learn how to feel. It also meant something even harder. It also meant that if I wanted even a chance to survive, that I could not have the same relationship with my mom anymore. My mom and I used together. That sentence still hurts to say out loud because I know how much pain she's in. I know how lost she must feel. I don't blame her. I'm not mad at her, you know. In the moment when when we first used together, she was just trying to help me, honestly. She didn't want to see me in pain, and I was. I live with fear that she might perish in her use. I feel guilty about that. I feel like I'm going to regret choosing sobriety over whatever time I could have been spending with her. It feels selfish, and especially with the role I played in my family as a child and growing up. I was like the caretaker, or, you know, was always taking care of everybody else, so choosing myself, choosing sobriety, I had guilt that I had to learn how to process, because I feel guilty still sometimes. Like, like she's angry with me, or she feels like I left or abandoned her. And I don't know, Mom, if you watch these videos, but I love you. And I'm sorry if you're upset with me. Just the guilt alone of wondering if I'll regret getting sober, that kind of pain is what fuels addiction. It's the kind of pain that people try to escape from. And if I'm being honest with myself, I removed substances from my life. So I think that, I probably use other things to escape now, like work, you know, the show. My ultimate goal with this show is to reach as many people as I possibly can, including my mother. When I went to residential treatment for the first time, I was honest with my peers and my counselors. I did not hide the fact that I had no interest in staying sober forever. In my mind, I'm like, well, I got 3 years of probation, right? Let's get through these 3 years, and then, we'll revisit the idea. But I had already made a reservation for myself. I knew that if I could find a way to reduce that 3-year time period, I would do it in a heartbeat, because all I wanted to do was get back to what I knew. I literally, like, sitting here thinking about it now, like, I could not fathom a life beyond substances. It was such a foreign thing, because like I said earlier, like, my whole identity was built around that. I have a new identity today, one that I'm proud of, but that's a scare man, it wasn't even, like, a question for me that the moment that I could use again, it was I was counting down the seconds. I used to say things like, the moment I get off probation, I'm going to drink again or smoke, because those weren't the substances that brought me to my knees. And they all warned me too. They said, maybe you can do that. It's just going to be a matter of time before you're back on the substances that almost killed you. And they weren't trying to scare me, they were trying to save my life. But my ego was like, yeah, right. I'm not in here because I'm an addict or an alcoholic. I'm not one of you. I'm not in here because I have that kind of problem. I'm in here because of circumstance. Man, and it's crazy how God works in my life. Looking back, I can see the moments when God was with me in my life, and in the moments where I had to be taught lessons, and this is one of those lessons, because exactly how they said what was going to happen happened to me. To make a long story short, I ended up relapsing while I was still in treatment. It's a 90-day program. I did my 90 days. I was waiting for sober living, and I relapsed. The same week I relapsed, I left. And you hear people say things in recovery, like, it takes zero time and you're right back to where you were. You could get some things back, right? But as soon as you choose to use again, it's it's over with. It's over with. There's not and for me in my situation, I didn't even give myself a chance to get some things back and acquire some things for myself. I was still in a residential treatment, wearing other people's clothes, right? So think about how little time it took for me to go right back to being homeless. I had no backup plan. They were trying to save my life, and I wasn't ready to hear it. I had already made my mind up, obviously. Sobriety isn't about logic though, it's about willingness. I was completely unwilling to surrender. And that didn't make me bad, it just made me human. Thinking back on it right now, it's just crazy to think about how adamant I was that I would use some kind of substance again. And the people who were trying to save my life told me not only what would happen, but how it would happen in verbatim. It's exactly how it happened. It started off with a drink. I ended up stopping at a gas station and getting a tall boy twisted tea. In that same week, I was right back in Euclid on the thing that almost killed me. Exactly how they said is exactly how it happened. At the end of the day, we're all just human beings trying to feel okay. And that sounds like a simple thing, but it's so deep if you really think about it. Here's where I had this. I remember why and when and where I had this revelation. So it was actually in group in treatment. We were talking about like the science behind how we damage our neural pathways, and it made me think about like the people's whose DOC is stimulants, and how hard it must be for people who have done so much damage to their brain using stimulants, with that artificial dopamine, that when you take that substance away, it's like you can't experience joy from anything anymore. And it just made me think like, man, dude, like my heart hurts because we are all just human beings trying to feel okay. That's it. And a lot of us, at least I know I never developed the tools on how to do that naturally without inserting a substance into my life, right? Into my body. I never gave myself a chance to. I started when I was 12 years old. I'm a baby. Started using when I was a baby until I was more afraid of staying the same than I was of change. Sobriety was always going to feel like a punishment instead of a solution. I knew that if I stayed the same, I was not going to survive. And I feel so lucky that I survived long enough to come to that realization, because I know a lot of people don't. I didn't get sober because I wanted to. I got sober because I was literally out of options. It was get sober or perish. But somewhere along the way, and I know exactly where it was, something shifted, right? Um, the book talks about complete psychic change. Um, the Bible talks about we are a new creation. I started to experience moments of peace. I had to learn who I was without a substance. And the thought of that it's scary for a lot of people, terrifying really, because it just doesn't seem possible. It didn't seem possible for me, right? I built my whole life around drugs. It's too late for me. It's not too late for you. It doesn't matter if you're 60. You still have a chance. If there's air in your lungs still, you still have a chance to get sober and make a change and live the rest of your life out in peace instead of turmoil. I started to build a life that I did not want to escape from. Today, my sobriety date, God has a sense of humor, is April 20th of 2023. How funny is that, right? I'm approaching 3 years of sobriety, and you can't tell me that God doesn't have a sense of humor. You can't. Because I never ever ever saw myself without smoking, right? It was my whole identity that I built as a child. Never ever saw myself without it. God had a bigger plan for me. He said, "Yeah, all right, here, I got something for you." Come on, dude. That's hilarious and incredible. Sobriety is no longer a punishment for me. It's something that I protect. I guard it with my life. This episode hit home for you. I need you to know that the Gandee Show exists for the people who are stuck between wanting to change and being terrified of it. Because that's where I was. For the ones who don't know who they are without substances. For the families watching someone they love slowly disappear. For the people who keep getting clean but never experience freedom. My mission is not to convince anyone to get sober, it's to tell you the truth about what it takes to stay alive. If you have a loved one, a family member who isn't ready to hear this yet, you're not abandoning them for choosing your own survival. You're not failing anybody by setting boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing that we can do is stay alive long enough. If that person ever becomes willing, you can be there for them. If you're not ready to change yet, please stay here. If you are ready and you don't know where to start, stay here. And if you are building a life that you no longer wish to escape from, stay here and help someone else find their way. Because nobody makes it out of this alone. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and keep showing up. Because honesty saves lives. I love you. I'm out.